Talbot was not at the moment present in person, but we had gone away to watch for and welcome Falstaff and his reinforcement of 5,000 men. Joan placed her batteries and bombarded the castle till night. Then some news came. Richemont, constable of France, this long time in disgrace with the king, largely became of the evil machinations of La Tremoille and his party, was approaching with a large body of men to offer his services to Joan, and very much she needed them, now that Falstaff was close by. Richemont had wanted to join us before when we first marched on Orleans, but the foolish king, slave of those paltry advisers of his, warned him to keep his distance and refused all reconciliation with him. I go into these details because they are important. Important because they lead up to the exhibitions of a new gift in Joan's extraordinary mental makeup, statesmanship. It is a sufficiently strange thing to find that great quality in an ignorant girl of 17 and a half, but she had it. Joan was for receiving Richemont cordially, and so was La Hire and the young man Laval's and others, but the Lieutenant General d'Alençon strenuously and stubbornly opposed it. He said he had absolute orders from the king to deny and this would have been a heavy disaster indeed. But Joan set herself the task of persuading him that the salvation of France took precedence of all minor things, even the commands of a sceptered ass, and she accomplished it. She persuaded him to disobey the king in the interests of the nation, and to be reconciled to Count Richemont and welcome him. That was statesmanship, and of this highest and soundest, and of the highest and soundest sort. Whatever thing men call great, look for it in Joan of Arc, and there you will find it. In the early morning, June 17th, the scouts reported the approach of Talbot and Falstaff, with Falstaff suffering force. Then the drums beat to arms, and we set forth to meet the English, leaving Richemont and his troops behind to watch the castle of. I rubbed my eye. Yeah, I can't really see. Okay. Anyway, she's behind to watch Castle Bergency and keep in doubt, not risk a battle with Joan at the time, but distribute the new levies among the English strongholds of the Loire, more levies from Paris. Let Joan exhaust her army with fruitless daily skirmishing. Let Joan exhaust her army with fruitless skirmishing. I don't know what I said. Then at night, at the right time, fall upon her in resistless mass and annihilate her. He was a widely experienced general. That was Falstaff. But the fierce Talbot would hear of no delay. He was in a rage over the punishment. He would have it out with her if he had not to fight her all alone. So Falstaff yielded, though he said they were now taking the loss of everything which the English had gained by so many years' work and so many hard knocks. The enemy had taken up a strong position and were waiting in order of battle, with their archers in the front and stockade before them. Night was coming on. A messenger came from the English with a rude defiance and an offer of battle. But Joan's dignity was not ruffled. Her bearing was not discomposed. She said to the herald, "Go back and say it too late to meet tonight. But tomorrow, please God and Our Lady, we will come to close quarters." Go back and say it is too late to meet tonight. But tomorrow, please God and Our Lady, we will come to close quarters. The night fell dark and rainy. It was that sort of light, steady rain which falls so softly and brings to one's spirit such serenity and peace. About 10 o'clock, d'Alençon, the Bastard of Orleans, La Hire, Poston of Saint-Trailles, and 2 or 3 other generals came to our headquarter tent and sat down to discuss matters with Joan. Some thought it was a pity that Joan had declined battle. Some thought not. Then Pothon asked her why she had declined it. She said, there was more than one reason. These English are ours. They cannot get away from us. Wherefore there is no need to take risk as at other times. The day was far spent. It was good to have such times and fair light of day when one's force is in a weakened state. 900 of us yonder keeping the bridge of Meung under the Marshal de Retz, 1,500 with the Constable of France keeping the bridge and watching the castle of Bergancy. Dumois said, I grieve for this depletion. Excellently, but it cannot be helped, and the case will be the same tomorrow as to that. Joan was walking up and down just then. She laughed her affectionate comradely laugh, and stopping before that old war tiger, she put her small hand above his head and touched one of his plumes, saying, now tell me, wise man, which feather is it that I touch? In sooth, Excellency, that I cannot. Name of God, bastard! Bastard, you cannot tell me this small thing, yet you are bold to name a large one, telling us what it is in the stomach of the unborn morrow, that we shall not have these men? Now it is my thought that they will be with us. That made a stir. That made a stir. That made a stir. Oh, great. I'm drooling. That made a stir. Where'd it be? Where'd it be? Où est mon lit? Où est mon lit? That made a stir. All wanted to know why she thought that, but La Hire took the word and said, let be. If she think it, that is enough. It will happen. Then Pothon of Saint-Trail said, there were other reasons for declining battle, according to the saying of your Excellency. Yes. One was that we, being weak and the day far gone, the battle might not be decisive. When it is fought, it must be decisive, and shall be. God grant it, and amen. There were still other reasons. One other, yes. She hesitated a moment, then said, this was not the day. Tomorrow is the day. It is so written. They were going to assail her with eager questions, but she put up her hand and prevented them. Then she said, it will be the most noble and beneficent victory that God has vouchsafed to France at any time. I pray you question me not as to whence or how I know this thing, but be content that it is so. There was pleasure on every face, and conviction and high confidence. A murmur of conversation broke out, but was interrupted by a messenger from the outpost who brought news, namely that for an hour there had been stir and movement in the English camp of a sort unusual at such a time, and with a resting army, he said. Spies had been sent under cover of the rain and darkness to inquire into it. They had just come back and reported that large bodies of men had been dimly made out who were slipping stealthily away in the direction of Meung. The generals were very much surprised, as any might tell from their faces. It is a retreat, said Joan. It has that look, said Alençon. It certainly has, observed the bastard of La Hire. It was not to be expected, said Louis de Bourbon. Louis de Bourbon. But one can divine the purpose of it. Yes, responded Joan. Talbot had reflected. His rash brain but has cooled. He thinks to take the bridge of Meung and escape to the other side of the river. He knows that this leaves his garrison of Bergancy at the mercy of fortune. To escape one hand of it, to escape our hands if it can. But there is no other course if he would avoid the battle, and that he also knows. But he should not get that bridge. We will see to that. Yes, said Alençon. We must follow him and take care of the matter. What of Bergancy? Leave Bergancy to me, gentle Duke. I will have it in 2 hours and at no cost of blood. It is true, Excellency. You will, but need to deliver this news there and receive the surrender. Yes, and I will be with you at Wang with the dawn, fetching the constable and his 1,500. And when Talbot knows that Beaugency has fallen, it will have an effect upon him. By the mass, yes, cried La Hire. He will join his young garrison to his army and break for Paris. Then we shall have our bridge force with us again, along with our Beaugency watchers, and be stronger for our great day's work by 4,200 able soldiers, as have been promised within the hour. Verily, this Englishman is doing our errands for us, and saving us much blood and trouble. Orders, Excellency, give us our orders. They are simple. Let the men rest 3 hours longer. At 1 o'clock, the advance guard will march, under your command, with Pothon of Saint-Charles II. The second division will follow at 2 under the lieutenant general. Keep well in the rear of the enemy, and see to it that you avoid an engagement. I will ride under guard to Beaugency and make so quick work there that I and the Constable of France will join you before dawn with his men. She kept her word, her guard mounted, and we rode off through the puttering rain, taking with us a captured English officer to confirm Joan's news. We soon covered the journey and summoned the castle. Richard Gouton, Talbot's lieutenant, being convinced that he and his 500 men were left helpless, conceded that it would be useless to try to hold out. He could not expect easy terms, yet Joan granted them nevertheless. His garrison could keep their horses and arms and carry away property into the value of a silver mark per man. They could go whither they pleased, but must take arms against France, but must not take arms against France for another 10 days. Before dawn, we were with our army again, and with us the constable and nearly all his men, for we left only a small garrison in Beaugency Castle. We heard the dull booming of cannon to the front and knew that Talbot was beginning his attack on the bridge, but some time before it was yet under a safe conduct given by Joan, to tell Talbot of the surrender. Of course, these pursuivants had arrived ahead of us. Talbot had held it wisdom to turn now and retreat upon Paris. When daylight came, he had disappeared, and with him Lord Scales and the garrison of men. What a harvest of English strongholds we had reaped in those 3 days. Strongholds which had defied France with quite cool confidence, and plenty of it until we came. Souvent, Poursuivant, Poursuivant,